Hey everyone, welcome in Betsperts Golf. Ryan Noonan here to talk about the first leg of the 2024 playoffs. It's not the Valero Texas Open still. I don't even know if we're going to change that intro. It's almost just a funny bit at this point. But yeah, excited to be here this morning. My guy Andy Molitor is under the weather. So I'm going to run through solo for you today, talk about what we have going on here at TPC Southwind playoffs. Look, I talked about it a little bit yesterday on the First Look show with Ron, PGA Splits 101. Check that out in the podcast feed. Check that out on our Betsperts Golf YouTube page. Built a unique model, some stuff that I think that is very unique to what we're going to see here this week at TPC Southwind. Touch briefly on this too, on the playoffs thing. Like, I think we all agree that it's not great. Right? Like this FedEx Cup playoff system. And I think down this, like last year too, we moved down this first round down to 70. There's a big carrot at the end of this week for guys to get into the top 50 and what that opens up for them financially in terms of scheduling for next year, signature events, all that stuff. So pretty big deal for especially the bottom half of this week's field. Then obviously when we get into what goes down in the final week in Atlanta for the Tour Championship, the staggered scoring. And look, a handful of years ago, we had two things going on at once, right? And we had a individual events and you could win at East Lake. And then you could, at the same time, you could have a situation where you had multiple times two winners, right? You had technically the winner of the event and you had the winner of the Tour Championship, the winner of the season. And it's a little anticlimactic, a little bit weird, probably a little bit difficult to navigate from a coverage standpoint for the TV cameras. I mean, we all remember Tiger a handful of years ago at East Lake. Like Justin Rose won the FedEx Cup playoff that year. Like, but it was such the aura of like what happened on 18 with Tiger and Rory and everyone like running behind him and fell back behind. And that was just an awesome scene. But like poor Justin Rose, nowhere near that finish, even though he technically was the guy that won the FedEx Cup playoff that year. So my only thing with this is no one loves it, but like, and not that you have the impact to change it. We do nuance so poorly nowadays, especially online. It is not a strength of our society. Things are so black and white. It is good or bad, this or that, left or right, like all of it. Nuance out the window. Just like come with maybe a suggestion, right? If you're going to like poo-poo on the FedEx Cup playoffs, just come with like maybe something that's better. And like, you never know. Like, I'm not saying that again, you have the ability or I have the ability to impact with a new situation or like a new like format. Just don't be the dude that shows up and like just tells you that it sucks. And then you're like, okay, well, what would you do? And you are sitting on your hands. You got no suggestions, no way to make it better. So it's a tough scenario. Obviously, we'll deal with that more in 2 weeks when we get to, to East Lake. Obviously, in that scenario, typically we have most books offer us multiple betting markets. We have the ability to bet on the actual FedEx Cup winner, and then we have with strokes, and then we have the ability to tackle that with the just individual straight up events, which again that helps. That makes it a little bit easier for us in the betting space. That makes a big difference there. But just in terms of how to actually crown a champion, like something should be done, in my opinion, in the final event to crown a champion. If that's really what you're doing, looking to crown a season-long champion through this, it can't just be one event. Like, and this season, Scotty and Xander need to be rewarded for how well they've played. They should not be starting in the same spot as whoever finds their way into the 30th spot here this year. It just shouldn't be the case. Patrick Cantley shouldn't win at East Lake and be the FedEx Cup champion. Hasn't won anything all year. It's barely contended in much of anything, right? So like, there's no good solution. I just at the top just want to say, hey, it's the playoffs. I know people poo-poo the playoffs. 70-man no cut event this week. Not our favorite thing, but again, we somewhat get used to these because we've had this a little bit more this season. Obviously moving into the signature events, and we've had this a little bit. So definitely changes the dynamic of handicapping and how to make placement bets and all those different things. But like, I don't know, just offer a solution, man. Just don't show up and just tell me it sucks. Cause that's just no fun. Like don't be that dude. So anyway, let's jump into a little bit here. Again, at the top, Betsperts golf coverage will continue here all season long. Mostly be driven by Ron, PGA Splits 101. In the off season, Andy and I obviously have some other things that we get involved with in terms of the football side and obligations there. Try to balance that as well. Definitely be present. Andy and I will continue to do the betting show. We did that all last year on Tuesdays. So you'll find that on your podcast feed. You'll find that here on the Betsperts Golf YouTube channel as well. Continue to check that out. But Ron, like, golf is all Ron is tasked with. So we will still be covering, writing up shows, models, submodels, DFS picks, ownership, everything for the entirety of the swing season. We are working on some evergreen content to help people continue to model better and learn how to use the rabbit hole. We are continuing to add to the rabbit hole. Some new things probably in the next week or two, hopefully in the next week. Some really exciting stuff that you'll be able to do. You cannot find anywhere else. We're continuing to try to find that combination. Things you cannot find anywhere else and things that are massive value adds to your process weekly handicapping golf, betting, DFS, whatever it is, your pools with your buddies, however it is, we want to continue to try to provide value for you and find ways that us as golf bettors, DFS players of the like, to say, hey, I would love to see that. And just trying to be really open and think of brainstorming ideas that we would love to be able to have our access to that data and be able to figure out, okay, well, if I could see that every week, that there'd be value in that for me. So we're trying to find ways to add it to the rabbit hole, create new tools, whatever it is. We are not done innovating here at Betsperts Golf. Great time. Again, golf continues all throughout the year. So a subscription will take you, you can get a monthly subscription. We have partners on the site. If you go to betspertsgolf.com, any of the pick'em sites that are out there, Vivid Picks, Underdog, different ways to take advantage of deals that they offer to get you quarterly subs, monthly subs. Again, check it out. Lots of great ways to get access to all the data that we have. And again, if you're seeing this for the first time, thanks for hanging out with us. The rabbit hole is officially licensed PGA Tour data. We allow you to customize it in a way that you can not do anywhere else in terms of filters, conditions, timeframes, all sorts of stuff to allow you to, I think, tell a better story in terms of building player pools for your DFS, making bets, all that stuff. So I spent some time last week out in Greensboro at Sedgefield early in the week before Debbie came in and made it kind of a wonky event and wonky finish. Kudos to everyone that got that off the grounds. I was really fascinated. I wanted to talk to as many players as possible and take advantage of the ability to do that early in the week when no one else is out there. And we spend so much time in data. There's obviously the core of the show we're going to do here, core of any write-ups, anything that we make in terms of decisions. We're not a big feel show, right? Like I'm not necessarily betting on a guy because I think he's due or just like the vibes of this guy this week. It's just not how we make decisions. And that's the beauty of golf betting. You can do however you like it. But I'm fascinated by really what's happened in the last a little less than a decade, even in terms of data on the golf side. It is a sport that is absolutely perfect for golf data. It is an individual, singular event type of sport, right? It is a golfer addresses the ball. There are obviously parameters in terms of weather. There could be different things that can impact it, but really, in terms of actionable data, golf provides a ton relative to, I think, even other sports, because you can really isolate it in terms of what's happening. And you can't go to the driving range or watch, PGA Tour range session. Literally, everyone's got a TrackMan. The little box that's telling them instantly swing speed, ball speed, spin rates, launch angles, everything right away. Boom. Cannot get away from it. We spend so much time, and obviously we have some of that data here in the rabbit hole. We spend so much time on the shot link data, strokes gain stuff. We spend so much time looking at like filtering, customizing it, finding ways to do it. I really wanted to know how much is that part of their process, right? And these guys have teams, right? So it's not necessarily like them per se, but really like, is that a part of your process at all? I really want to take advantage of the opportunity to sit in press conferences and walk and talk with players and get on the range and hang out and have access that, I'll be honest, I probably shouldn't have access to, but I do. I work in golf media and I can do that. So it's really cool. And was fascinated to hear an almost like a line of demarcation. I don't have the number in terms of age. Older guard could not give a rep for the most part, right? They still have TrackMan, but they, in terms of strokes gained, anything like that, is just, it doesn't even seem like most guys have a team that is giving them any information. They don't care. It is field. As I talked about yesterday, my guy Lucas Glover, who is early 40s, mid 40s, just in a very charming Southern drawl that he has. Like, look, I never not go to a tournament. That's a bad Southern drawl. Sorry. Never not go to a tournament because I can't putt on Bermuda. Was kind of the one of the answers he gave me. He is working on trying to hit the ball higher off the tee. He's working on using data that way. But in terms of strokes gain data, to get a feel for how to dictate practice or where maybe he's slipping in performance or something that he needs to get dialed in on, not part of his process at all. Shane Lowry used to walk off the 18th for every round and check his strokes gain data for the day. He'd go on pgatour.com and look and see and try to find it and see how he did for the day. And it became almost like it kind of got in his head a little bit too, right? And that's obviously a flawed way to do it because maybe the round's not over and it's relative to the field. And if the whole field's not in, like, that's not a great way to do it. But like, very interesting to see, like, hey, when that came out, like, he was all on top of it. What did I do today? Right. And like, it beat him up a little bit. Bad putting, and you walk off and you say, I lost 2.5 strokes putting today. He probably knew he lost to the field in putting, but to get the actual number, I think it messed with him a little bit. He's backed off. His team does a little bit. Younger guard, kind of shift a little bit more. Jordan Spieth. Spieth, I thought was really interesting. He likes some of the newer stuff, some of the stuff that's out, some of the stuff he could do in the rabbit hole. Looking at performance tee to green when less than driver is in play. We had a little bit of that last week, not as much this week per se, but that's fascinating to us, and that's why we have that as a filter in the rabbit hole, the ability to look and see how golfers perform when less than driver is the ask, right? When you're having a club down and make some thoughtful decisions in terms of being accurate off the tee, and what does that look like? How are you performing in those instances, which I thought was fascinating. And it is part of it. And Spieth, as you would imagine, has a team. His team is involved in it, more so than Spieth, obviously, himself looking at that, but there's definitely a part of it. And then you got the younger guy. You got Akshay, 22, has never, can't remember the last time he hit balls on the range without a TrackMan. He and his team are locked in, make practice decisions, make practice rounds decisions on current form in shot length, strokes gain data, right? I'm slipping in, my approach is not dialed in the last 12 rounds. I got to go fix some stuff. I'm not gaining off the tee in the last handful of events. What's happening there? And he will manipulate practice schedules based on that. Fascinating. And I think we'll continue to see that. I think it will be a spot where you're going to be left behind. The one thing that I found really interesting, Spieth talked about putting splits. He doesn't think that that's a thing at all in terms of like grass splits, putting on, Bermuda versus bent or anything like that. He feels like if I'm rolling it really well, I can make the adjustment. There probably is a slight adjustment to be made, and I can make it if I feel like I'm confident standing over a putt and all those different things. I found that to be really interesting. I would push back a little bit. I think that there's something to be said for that. Like, any data has to be taken in a little bit more context. Again, this goes back to the thing at the top. Nuance. We don't do it very well. In the middle of a data set, even a big sample size where I think it's actionable is probably a little bit noisy, right? If you're a guy that is, say, in the middle of the pack in putting splits on a surface and, maybe much better on another, That there could be some noise and variance in that. Maybe we give it a little bit too much credence and it probably doesn't deserve it. At the tails of anything like that, especially when we have an actual sample of data, right? I think it does matter. I think if you just are notably worse on a putting surface relative to your baseline, relative to every other surface or most other surfaces, there's something to be said for your struggles or your strong performance on another surface. If you grew up in California and you can navigate California POA versus someone from the Southeast who gets out there and just year after year just can't drop any putts in January, February, March when we spend some time out in California. I think there's something there. So I'm going to be cautious with that moving forward in events where I really want to give weight to putting. I probably want to look at more so than putting splits alone. I also want to look at just recent putting form. Probably I'll look more at short-term putting form. To Speed's point, if you're rolling it well in the moment, that can probably translate better regardless of what your putting splits are on Bermuda. I will look at it as well, but I think I want to incorporate that in a more holistic way to get a better, similar to what we do with just recent form, strokes gained, tee to green, or baseline, strokes gained total, some of those things. So that's some of my takeaways from last week. I thought it was really, really interesting to hear, some of the differing opinions and who's got their hands in it themselves, who has a team that's involved, all those different things. I think it's really interesting takeaway because we spend so much time in it, and whether it matters to them doesn't matter to me necessarily, but I wanted to hear what their thoughts were. But it's definitely some great takeaways, and felt like it was a worthwhile opportunity to try to get a sense of what goes on off the course in terms of their preparation. Obviously, these guys made their way based on feel, and it is definitely golf. If you play, it's a feel game. If you're missing putts, it. You don't need to necessarily see data. But I think that there is something to be said for the balance of that. And I think the Lucas Glovers of the world, in terms of their approach to the data, are going to be dinosaurs sooner than later, if they're not already, in terms of how to jump into this. So, all right. Appreciate you listening to that. We'll jump into, let's look at the odd board here for courtesy of our friends over at the Lines. This is, you don't need my face. Look, Scotty Scheffler at the very top. Again, 70-man, no-cut event here. Best players in the world rolling up here. Xander is available up to 8s. Rory right behind at 10. Kind of their own, Scotty, Xander, kind of their own tier. Rory, Colin kind of in the mix. Those 4 guys, sub 12. And then we drop off a little bit. Ludwig, Tommy, Cantley, Hideki, they're sub 20. Jump into the 30s there. We had Tom Kim, Russell Henley, Corey Connors, Victor Hovland out to 40. We got kind of another little group there. Interesting numbers on some of these guys here. Sanjay's. I walked up to Sanjay with, I just got there on Tuesday morning. I was all excited, and I catch Sanjay walking by himself to the range. Again, there are no fans out there. It's just, golfers, their teams, media folk. And I catch Sanjay walking to the range and walk up to him. I'm so excited. I got this great data question in the barrel, ready to go, fired off. Sanjay, appreciate it, Ryan Noonan, Betsperts Golf. I want to talk to you about data, give him the whole thing. Can't wait for his answer. Looks at me. Blank stare. Silence. Sanjay, I think has done a great job. I can't imagine coming over to another country to make to live and to work and do all these things. And I get excited. I probably talk a little bit too fast. And Sanjay, I lost him. He had no idea what I was talking about. Some dying on the inside. Kind of try to reframe it a little bit slower. And Sanjay just says, practice more. So takeaway from Sanjay, regardless, was just practice more. So it was fantastic, fantastic interaction with Sanjay. I was like, who is this guy? I just want to go hit some balls. Great interaction there, but enjoyable. You see JT, Sahith, Billy Ho, Cam, our defending champ from last week, Aaron Rye at 50, kind of rounding out the top of the board. And, obviously 70-man field, some good win equity, actually really good golfers down here at the bottom, because, again, it is a no-cut event. Scheffler and Xander and Rory are here, so kind of a difficult ask, but you can see, obviously, a ton of talent, some big names at triple digits down here as well. Definitely interesting way to look at it. Before we jump into the data real quick, talk a little bit about the course. If you're not familiar, again, check out Ron's preview on betspertsgolf.com. Ron does, again, I will say Ron's preview put toe-to-toe with anything out there in the space. It is actionable, everything you need, sometimes more than you need. But again, if you are, a golf hardo, you definitely, I think, will enjoy it. But again, 70-man, we're in just outside of Memphis. We've been coming here for a long time. I think 1989. This is the third year that it's the first leg of the playoffs. So again, some course history here is I think, rich. And then again, guys weren't coming here all the time, but now we have the last couple of years of the top tier players because it's the first leg of the playoffs. So a lot of water here. Again, just year in and year out, it's one of the top in terms of water balls here. We have grabby Bermuda grass, similar to what we had last week. Again, they don't have to grow it out long, but Bermuda rough can be a little bit wonky in terms of flyers. So playing here from the fairway becomes a massive, massive advantage. You do not want to be in the Bermuda rough, even if it's 2.5 inches or so, right? It's not 5-inch rough or anything like that, but you have to be able to play from the fairway. Interesting here in terms of look at greens and regulation. When you are off the fairway, you are in trouble. Approach shots are coming from basically 125 to 200 or so. So you need to be dialed in there, basically, pitching wedge to 7-iron. But greens and reg from the fairway, 76%. It is a solidly above tour average, about 10, 11% above tour average. And these are nice zoysia grass fairways, which we're seeing more in the southeast. Easier for maintenance crews to maintain those. We see it at East Lake, some other places where we saw it at Valhalla this year with the changes that they made for the PGA Championship of that course. We see some zoysia fairways there. If you miss the rough or you're in the rough, you miss the fairway off the tee, 41% green in regulation. So that is a drastic drop. So fairway off the tee, massively important here. It's really hard to score and make headway against the field here if you're playing from the rough. These are also the third smallest greens on tour. So it gets even harder. Again, that speaks to the number of 41% greens and reg from the fairway or from the rough because, again, unpredictable lies, unpredictable flyers, and then into small greens. And again, that's where you get the water balls too. It's not necessarily always off the tee. It's playing from the rough, going aggressive, going after the pin still. That becomes a problem and why you have some blow up holes. So that is going to be a big thing this week. And again, similar to last week where you really want to be able to keep the ball in play. And if you do, like you saw at Sedgefield, you can score. But if you are off the fairway, you could be 160, 170 yards away and you're laying up. I had a ball where I saw last week in practice rounds, like Patton Kazire couldn't find his ball. I happened to be right next to it when it landed, and he was 190 yards out on the par 5 15th, 190 yards. He had to lay up. He laid up 60-yard little chip to get himself out of there, right? So typically these guys are going to have no problem being aggressive from the rough from 190 yards out. It's just hard to do in the Bermuda, and it's even harder to do when water's in play. So looking at some sort of hybrid accuracy off the tee is going to be really, really impactful. And again, greens in reg are hard to hit anyway. You're going to need to scramble a little bit here because these are small greens. So you can even miss greens, obviously, when you're playing from the fairway. So you need to be able to chip a little bit here, and that matters a ton as well. Bermuda greens for putting. But again, smaller greens, I'm going to give a little bit less credence to what we're actually doing from a putting standpoint this week because it just greens are a little bit smaller. You need to score, but it's not a place where we get into the mid to low 20s often. This is just not a big factor for me here this week. All right, here I'm going to share some stuff with you. Let's look at some data. I want to walk you through my model this week. I'm going to share this here real quick. If you've never seen this before, again, this is the rabbit hole. This is our officially PGA Tour license database. You can mess around, obviously, here with some of the filters at the top. We have the field loaded here. You can play around with the course region, which I'll show you a little bit here. You can go back to other seasons, add multiple seasons, whatever you need to do. We default to the strokes gained menu, but you can see lots of different ways to look at the data. Time frame here, default as well, but you can go all the way back to 5 years. Again, you can look at, if you'd like to play DFS, we have the DFS salaries loaded in here as well on DraftKings. You can also look at FanDuel salaries. You want to look at specific course history. You want to look here at TPC Southwind or a group of corollary courses. You can select them and add them and look at this data through that lens as well, grouping them all together or individually. You can look at different course types. Again, you want to look at TPC courses. Next week we go to Denver for the BMW in Castle Pines. We're playing at elevation a little bit. So looking at mountain course types is going to give you, I think, a little bit of an edge. Again, we don't play a lot of those on tour, but you can see smaller sample, back it out a little bit and see what happens there. Again, lots of different ways to look at that here as well. And then you can see this little sliding bar too. You can mess around with the rounds played, all those different things. Default from a view standpoint for ranking in any of these metrics, but you can look at average, strokes gained, total strokes gained, or percentage of rounds gained as well, getting an understanding of consistency. You can look at any model that I built or our staff or some other folks in the space. Andy Lack, Inside Golf Podcast, one of the best golf podcasts out there. You can look through Andy's model here, look at some of the stats that he added, see what you missed, see what you would want to add. Matt Vicenzi, Tab It In podcast. You can get Matt's model as well. Lots of different stuff. Our guys here at Betsperts Golf as well. Again, just trying to help you learn how to fish, kind of a vibe, right? Like, look what other people are doing. Maybe it's something you didn't add to your model. Maybe you want to look at it. I think it's a great resource and a way to build and look. So I'm going to walk you through the model that I built here this week. Really straightforward, actually. To add anything to your model, you just hit this little plus button. You can give it a little note or a name if you want to. Hit add, and it'll be in your create mixed condition model section. And then you go in and weigh it and do all sorts of stuff. Very easy to do. If you want to see that in action, go to our Monday show. Again, our first look show. We built a model for TBC Southwind that I think is unique, using some of the unique things for the model of the week. This is what I built this week. You can see the top of the model: Scotty Scheffler, Xander Schauffele, Rory McIlroy. Your top 4 in the betting odds. Your top 3 in the betting odds, top 3 in the model as well. 4th is Hideki Matsuyama. He's 4th in this category. Let me actually reshape it. This jumps out to you a little bit different. When we recalibrate here in the model, this is not the top of the betting board. This is a little bit different. Scotty, Xander, Russell Henley, 3rd in the model. Again, if you are a Betsperts Golf subscriber, this is not going to be super surprising to you. That I built again. I build the model and it spits out the results. I don't select the players that I want to appear in the top of the model and then it spits it out, which would be fair feedback if you thought that was the case, because it does not take much to convince me to bet on Russell Henley. But yeah, 3rd in the model. Colin Morikawa, another name that I have been on and would have the most FOMO this week if Colin Morikawa is to win. 4th in the model. Aaron Rai, playing really good golf. Impossible to argue with that. Obviously, won last week. He's just been consistently finishing inside the top 20 for the last couple of months. 5th in the model. Tommy Fleetwood, Rory McIlroy, Shane Lowry, Hideki Matsuyama, Ludwig Ober, rounding out the top 10 of the model. No one's super surprising there necessarily. See some other names that may be of interest. And again, part of why the rabbit hole is beautiful is because you can see one of these names and you don't have to just bet it automatically, but it should make you think a little bit and make you want to dig in a little bit. Like, all right, Christian Bezadenhout, 14th in the model. That's probably a little higher than I was expecting. Right. And you can see that based off of even his DraftKings salary next to him. Alex Noren showing up well in the model. Siwoo Kim showing up well in the model in terms of where they are in the pricing tier. Sepp Straka also in the top 20. Ben Griffin a $6,600 player on DraftKings here this week. He's top 20 in the model. So that's kind of what it should do. Lead you to continue. Click on their player page. By clicking on their name, will take you directly to their player page. You can get an understanding of their form, and you can see why they would rank well in the model. We can kind of dig into that too. So this is what I did first. You can click on the icon to get a sense of what it is. This last 6 months here, just bottom line, who is playing well, strokes gained total, last 6 months. This is just kind of what we would call an anchor stat. I don't want to overfit a model that doesn't capture the best golfers, right? So it's a little bit misleading where you could be double counting some stuff, but at the same time, I want to anchor it with the best players and see. We'll start there. All right. I gave it 10% weight. You can see. Next, I want to go a little bit different. This is strokes gained tee to green. I looked at the last 5 years here at TBC Southwind. So it took out putting, obviously a little bit more variance in putting, just baseline, tee to green, who's comfortable navigating this course, knowing that fairways matter, knowing that around the green matters. Sometimes I like to do ball striking instead, but tee to green is what I wanted here because I think tee to green matters the most, more so than anything here. We've seen just elite ball strikers win and compete at this course the last couple of years. So tee to green at this course. Now, again, small sample for some of these guys and no sample at all for a handful of these guys. But looking at the last 5 years, tee to green, TBC Southwind, Justin Thomas, number 1, Hideki Matsuyama 2, Scotty Scheffler 3, Zalatoris 4, McIlroy 5, Cantley 6, Cam Young 7, Morikawa 8, Sam Burns 9, Tom Kim 10. It was interesting. Next, I wanted to look at approach off of Zoysia. So I wanted to just give it a little bit of a look. Again, didn't give it much weight, 5%, just a little bit of a look because it's unique. We only really see it depending on how often you're playing, like 4 or 5 events per year that have these soft, really, really favorable Zoysia grass fairways. And I just want to see who's played well in that scenario, who's dialed in an approach. Victor Hovland, Xander Schauffele, Will Zalatoris, Colin Morikawa, Tony Finau, Hideki Matsuyama, Sepp Straka, Akshay Bhatia, and Harris English, Scotty Scheffler, rounding out your top 10 and approach from Zoysia, which is, again, interesting. Wanted to just take a look at it. Small sample, but again, didn't give it much weight. Look at this next group. This is strokes gained total, but I'm looking at, I believe this is Southeast. So this is, Southeast courses over the last 2 years of time frame. Who's played well? There's some corollary things in terms of water here. There's some corollary in terms of Bermuda rough, Bermuda greens, just strokes gained total in the Southeast over the last 2 years. Xander Schauffele, Scotty Scheffler, Ludwig, Rory, Wyndham, again, Russell Henley, Patrick Cantley, Tommy Fleetwood, Ben Griffin, and Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa right behind it, Hideki Matsuyama right behind it as well. So that is who's playing well over the last handful of years in the Southeast. So again, things that I don't always do, but I thought it was a little bit different and wanted to get a sense of it this week. We're looking here. So strokes gained off the tee, gave it 7.5% of the model this week. And we are looking at high penalty for missing the fairway. And again, that speaks to the greens and regulation piece, right? There is this brings water balls into play. This brings your ability to score, massively impacts it. The ability to go into the model, look at missed fairway penalty and select high. That is super relevant. And that is something that we believe in massively here at Betsperts Golf that I think is impactful. Like that filters out the ability to take the club head off and go bomb and gouge with really no penalty, regardless of where you land in the fairway. The goal is just to get close to the hole. That's not the ask here at TBC Southwind. So we don't want to take a look at that. That data would be really irrelevant to what is going on here. So we don't want any of that data in this data set, and this filters some of that out. Guys that play well when there is a high missed fairway penalty. And again, there's not a lot of less than driver here, but this kind of speaks to that. This is a sense of like who's still being cautious, knowing that they need to find the fairway. Victor, Akshay, Scotty, top 3. Rory's 4th, Morikawa 5, Cam Young 6, Connor 7, Ludwig 8, Siwoo 9, Hideki 10. You can see some other names that we haven't seen yet. Minwoo Lee, Benny Ann in the top 12, which I think is interesting. But again, some other names right behind it that have been floating around for a handful. You can see Austin Eckroat here, Brian Harmon, Matthew Pavone, Sepp Straka again, and Xander right here at 20. Next, this is some of the more important stuff for sure. We got to be accurate off the tee, guys. You got to be in the fairway. This is some sort of this is a hybrid, basically, right? More so than total driving hybrid of accuracy off the tee and distance. I want a accuracy hybrid. Now I'm giving it 15% collectively, but 10% to distance from the edge of the fairway and 5% to driving accuracy. Distance from the edge of the fairway, better stat. If you've watched or listened to any of our shows this year, it's just going to give you a better sense of what you're actually trying to capture in terms of accuracy. It is less yes, no, accuracy, binary stat, fairway yes, fairway no. Relevant, but needs to be told at the same time as distance from the edge of the fairway. Because this tells you basically when you miss, how bad's the miss. And bad misses here are the problem. Bad misses can be water. Bad misses are going to be second cut of rough. Distance from the edge of the fairway, just how far off when you miss, do you miss? And I like to look at when you see some of the gap here, right? So like, look at Emiliano Grillo. This is a great example here. 37th in this field in driving accuracy. 6th in distance from the edge of the fairway. So it tells you when Grillo misses the fairway, he's just off the fairway more times than not, right? He's not spraying it. He's not hooking it into the woods. He's not putting them in the water a ton here. He's probably, if he's missing, he's just missing a little bit. And that's better, right? A first cut we can play with here a little bit, but like if you're way off, that's trouble. Denny's kind of in the same boat. You see Nick Taylor, same boat, 10th in distance from the edge of the fairway, 43rd in driving accuracy. I think this is really looking at it next to each other matters a ton. And you can get the opposite where guys spray it a little bit. Here's Bezadenhout again, right? Accuracy not great, but doesn't really doesn't go the other way. If I do the opposite here, I can search the back end of distance from the edge of the fairway. Cam Davis, accuracy, not bad, middle of the pack-ish. I mean, 70 guys here this week, but man, 66 from distance from the edge of the fairway. When Cam Davis misses, relative to this field, he's in trouble. And that's not a great place to be. Minwoo Lee, Thigala, same thing. Even Akshay a little bit, right? He's finding, finds fairways. Pavon's the same, finds fairways, but distance from the edge of the fairway, not as great. That becomes a little bit of a problem. So that matters this week a ton, and that's why collectively accuracy is getting a 15% grade. But look, you see some commonalities at the top. These guys that are doing well in both. Scotty won in distance from the edge of the fairway. Absolutely cheating, not fair, but part of why he's the best player in the world. See Russell Henley, and Scotty top 5 in both accuracy and distance from the edge of the fairway. Russell Henley, same thing, top 3 in both. Just keeping the ball in play is not going to get himself in trouble. Tom Kim doing well in both. Siwoo Kim well in both. Colin top 5 in both. Fantastic to see. Brian Harmon here. We touched on Grillo. Denny, Sanjay, Nick Taylor. Those are some of the guys that I think are at the top. You see some guys right down here that are interesting too. Austin Eckroat, going to keep the ball in play. Aaron Rye, going to keep the ball in play. Fitzy, keeping the ball in play this year. Really interesting to see that too. Rory, not giving up a ton despite the fact that he is gripping and rip sometimes. Had some success here and knows how to keep the ball in play. His distance is a massive advantage, even if he's clubbing down at times. So that is, again, interesting to take a look at here. So accuracy off the tee, massive, massive, massive piece this week. Now we get into some approach buckets. I didn't get into approach ranges. I've touched on this too. I think approach ranges are, again, something we can look at here. You want to see how someone's doing from a proximity standpoint from 125 to 150, 150 to 175, 175 to 200, all that stuff. It's really hard. And again, I don't mean any disrespect to people that put in their model or if you value it. I think it's really hard you're basically painting with a broad brush across all golfers and basically saying that, okay, Brian Harmon is going to play the same amount of shots from the 125 to 150 bucket as Rory McIlroy. It's just not the case. the distance will show up. Again, over 70% driver off the tee here. It's kind of an average driver place. Again, there will be holes where you club down. There'll be spots where you don't. So it's not anything that we're making adjustments there in terms of off the tee club selection. But if I go ahead and I can't weigh the proximity buckets based off of each player. Maybe that's something we need to do at some point. Seems like a big tech ask for our development team, but until we can do that, for me, it's kind of noisy, and I wouldn't want to under or overweight a proximity range because not every player is playing a similar amount of shots from that range. And there are some instances that matters. There are some courses where everyone's kind of laying up and playing that second shot from the same place on a number of holes. That's relevant. Here it's not to me. So instead, I just want approach form and kind of a rolling form average. You can see here, I have 3 in a row, 5%, 7.5%, 10%. 10% last 50 rounds. Baseline, bigger sample. How are you playing from an approach standpoint? That's, I think, more indicative of baseline skill. Last 24 rounds. So for most of these guys that are making cuts, last 6 events, how are you playing from an approach standpoint? And then even more recent, knowing that, hey, guys can get informed. They can make some adjustments. They can be just striking it really well right now. How are you playing the last 12 rounds? So again, you're making cuts. So that's your last 3 events. And again, there's double counting in here a little bit. But again, if I'm going to double count anything, I want it to be approach. That's the stickiest stat, the most relevant stat. And I think what matters here more than anything, are you in a good place to be able to put yourself in position to score? What's approach look like? And again, some of these stats are going to be double counting, but approach is one I'm comfortable doing. So kind of a rolling, weighted approach form, not messing with proximity buckets, just overall, how are you playing from an approach standpoint? And, not a ton of super surprising names here at all. Last 50, you can see Scotty. Scotty is second, first, and first. He's pretty good. You can see Russell Henley here next. He is, pretty much dialing 11, 7, 11. Tom Kim, recent form, not as good as his baseline form. So I think is also why this is interesting to take a look at. Siwoo Kim, I think maybe where we would expect him to be. Right around the mid-teens, low 20s in this field. Again, top 70 golfers in the FedEx Cup playoffs. This is a strong field. Morikawa, solid. A little bit down for Morikawa, to be honest, considering the rest of his game has been so good. He's putting better, is around the greens better, has been gaining off the tee more consistently. Part of that's because he puts it in play. But again, nothing super surprising. He's still one of the best consistent approach players in the field, even though we might be a little bit off of top tier Colin. You can see, again, this is still shifting by, I'll rank this by last 50. This looks better. So there you go, Scotty. Xander makes sense. Absolutely dialed in. Second in the last 50, first in the last 12. Corey Connors, which we would expect. Baseline Corey Connors, third in this field. Recent stuff, not quite as good, but still really good. Tom Hoagie, same thing. It's kind of what you would expect. Tom Hoagie, absolutely dialed in. Finau has been awesome. He's been awesome. Tina Green, and the putting's been better. Fifth the last 50 rounds, but again, last second in this field in the last 24 rounds. Really good stuff. Aaron Rai getting it done, which we'd expect. Shane Lowry, the same. Comes down to the putter for those guys. Sepp, a little bit worse than baseline, but still really, really good. This kind of speaks to what Ben Griffin has been doing as of late. Top 3 in the last 12 and 24 rounds. 9th, though, still really good for Ben Griffin in the last 50 rounds. Ludwig, top 10 in the last 50 and 24 rounds. A little less sharp in the last 12 rounds out. Touched on Russell and Colin and Siwoo. Johnny Vegas playing some good golf as of late. You can see he's popping there. Rory, not quite so strong in the last 12 rounds. Small sample. You can see here, again, it's interesting. 59 out of 70 in the last 12 rounds. Super, super small sample. So that might not be of any interest to you because, again, 12 rounds is noisy. But I do want to just see who's playing well. And again, I always think having the longest view in the room for golf data is the best way to do it. But I think ignoring short-term form is also silly. So again, this is not one event. This is the last 3 events for Rory, 59th in approach. Seamus Power, Akshay. Again, kind of things that jump out here. Hovland, short-term form from an approach standpoint, not great. Baseline, obviously, much better than that. Excuse me. Other ones that jump out here. Sahith jumps out a little bit, not performing up to his baseline over the last 50 rounds comparatively. So, Cantley, better than his baseline of late. So, again, trending in the right direction. That's kind of why I want to do this. Same thing, Homa, struggling. Davis Thompson struggling a little bit. So this is kind of why this, looking at it this way and having it next to each other in the model is really, really important. Around the green, I wanted to look at specifically here, Bermuda around the green, because that's what we have here. And again, that's a little bit unique. We have a mix in terms of the ability to look at shaved runoffs or thicker collars around the green. We have a mix of it here, so I didn't want to break it up into anything in particular, but just around the green, last 2 years when the rough surface is Bermuda. Around the green is a little bit noisy, but I think this tells us, again, going back, I'm grabbing 50 rounds in 2 years. That should pull some of the noise out. And again, I think it matters a lot here because, again, small greens, 3rd smallest on tour, and a 41% green and regulation rate from the rough. Guys are going to have to gain around the green. I didn't look at scrambling. Scrambling because it's tying in a factor of putting as well. I just want to look at around the green. I think there's something to be said for looking at around the green next to scrambling, similar to what we just did with approach, but I left it out. You can see here, JT, Matt Hughes, Scotty, again, completely unfair to be really good around the green, accurate off the tee, long, and be the best iron player in the world. Just tough scene for these guys. Norin, Brennan Todd, Peter Malnati, Xander Schauffele, Seamus Power, Matthew Fitzpatrick, and Christian Bezaden, who round out your top 10. Get some other names not far off that have been of interest and have been in some other spots that are interesting this week too. Who's really struggled here around the green? He's Griot, EVR, Harmon, Connors, Bavon, Bobby Mack, Pendrith, Hoagie, Hovland, Zal. Again, part of this is like it's twofold. This matters less for guys if the approach game is really good. But it doesn't not matter. It matters for everyone. We've seen Hovland be able to navigate that if he's dialed in. From an approach standpoint, Zalatoris, same. He's won here. But again, this is just kind of just giving a more holistic view of what's going on for these guys. Par 70 this week. So when we have 2 par 5s to take advantage of, you got to be dialed in from a par 4 standpoint. You got to be, this is also going to give us a little bit of bogey avoidance. Ron and I did that yesterday with our model, looking at high water danger, high miss fairway penalty, looking at par 4 birdie rate. I like birdie average here. Personally, looking at the last 50 rounds, gave it a 7.5% weight. Just your par 4 scores. Scotty, Xander, Aaron Rai, Ben Griffin again, Rory, Sanjay, Morikawa, Hideki Matsuyama, Ludwig Oberg, and Bobby Mack round out your top 10. Guys struggling here: Pavon, Knapp, Zalatoris, Griot, Cam Davis, Hadwin, Fitz, Austin Eckroat, interesting. Benon, Nick Dunlap, Eric Cole, not great. And this is bogey avoidance. Looking at this here, we're looking at last 6 months. That's just it. No other parameters or anything like that. Just who's avoiding bogeys. These are good golfers. You see the corollary to the par 4 scoring. So somewhat double counting a little bit, but you get gaps. Billy Horschel, par 4 scoring, not great, but he's not making big numbers. He's avoiding bogeys at a pretty good rate. So those things kind of work in conjunction with each other. Last is the putting. I talked about it. I'm giving putting 5% total weight, but I have it split out here. Recent putting. This is just regardless of anything, last 16 rounds putting. Who is putting well right now? Good putters at the top: Matt Hughes, Brandon Todd, Taylor Morris, Sam Burns, Wyndham Clark, Max Gracerman. Interesting. That is with Sedgefield data. Aaron Rai, Sanjay, Xander, Eric Cole. Those are your good putters. And this next one is your Bermuda putting splits. This is Bermuda putting last 50 rounds, if we can get it. You can see here, tops of that, Russell Henley, Max Gracerman, Sam Burns, Harris English, EVR, Matthew Pavone, Ludwig Oberg, Patrick Cantley, Nick Dunlap, Aaron Rai. Massive putting gains for Aaron Rai this year, which kind of speaks to the success. So, looking at your bad Bermuda putters who are also just putting poorly currently. Zalatoris jumps out. Steven Yeager jumps out. Spieth jumps out. Jake Knapp, Sepp. Interesting because Sepp and Zalatoris were in the playoff here a couple years ago. So yeah, interesting to see. So yeah, that wraps the model this week. Bets for me. I'm gonna look at some of these prices. I don't know what to do. Considered doing a solo bullet Colin again. Didn't because again, I don't know what I was hoping for, that I would see a 20 or something like that, but 14 was tough. Now it's just nuked down to 12. I get why people are on Colin. Makes a ton of sense. First click for me was Hideki. He keeps the ball in play off the tee. So I'm starting there. Excellent showing last time out. Got the bronze in Paris. Similar to Ask. I think TB Southwind and Le Golf National are similar in the sense that there's a lot of water in play and you have to be dealing from the fairway. And that's really what we saw there. Water lurking everywhere, and Hideki played really good golf. He gained nearly 1.5 strokes per round on approach at Le Golf National. That is his best showing since the Players back in March. So I feel like the form is really good for Hideki. You saw he ranked high in the model overall, strong on recent form. He was 4th. Course history here, specifically 2nd. Multiple competitive rounds here. Strong Zoysia grass history from an approach standpoint, 4th in bogey avoidance, and top 10 in off the tee with high miss fairway penalty. So, and I love his short game. Small greens, not a great putter on Bermuda, but overall, it's more for me, Hideki form putting, and I think he's playing really good golf. 30s, 35s out there on Hideki, like that quite a bit. Next click, Russell Henley. Again, touched on it, but again, 3rd of my model. Doesn't take much for me to bet on Henley, but 40s, I'm in for sure. Really good golf all year. Southeastern guy from Georgia, familiar with Bermuda, obviously, and continues to put himself in position against the best fields. He has finished T7 or better in 3 of the past 8 majors. Good fields. Not necessarily courses that you would always think would suit Russell Henley because he's not necessarily long off the tee. But again, the distance isn't like he's not Brendan Todd off the tee. But even that, like Brendan Todd can compete in this field this week. So you have to go back to the 2022 U.S. Open, 45 events to find a time where Russell Henley didn't gain inaccuracy off the tee. Just keeps the ball in play. Does not put himself out of position very often. They saw he's the best Bermuda putter here in the field in the last 6 months, and ball striking numbers are up over a half stroke per round compared to his rolling 50 baseline. So just playing good golf, like a good fit for him here. And I think he's underrated. Just a guy that continues to knock on the door, and I think will break through. Jumped way down to a couple of bombs. I might have some of those guys in the 40 range to add another. But I clicked on Keegan at 100. Sorry. I like to bet on Keegan. He's also another guy who's really good and can play in this type of situation, and played really good golf last week. There were 3 golfers last week that made the cut that hit 75% of their fairways and gains at least 1.3 strokes ball striking and 1.5 tee to green. It was young Japanese guy, Ryu Hasatsune, and Aaron Rai, who won the event. So there's some corollary things to, I think, positional golf, shorter golf. With Colonial, Walleye, those are Keegan's best finishes this year, T2 at both of those. He won at TPC River Highlands last year, obviously. A lot of water in play, smaller greens, positional golf. Like, these are spots where Keegan plays really well. And having talked to him, on Wednesday of last week. Got like 5 minutes with Keegan. It was awesome. As a fellow New Englander, talk Celtics, talk Pats. It was great. But there's something in the data with Keegan that I wanted to hear him articulate, and it's true. He's been really cognizant of changing his approach based off of the course, even more so this year than ever before. And he's had a driving accuracy rate of more than 10% above field average in his past few events where that was the ask. And that was, again, what happened last week at Sedgefield. So he's adjusting more than ever before, specifically to what's going on at the event. So again, 75% plus accuracy rate last week. Keegan's going to keep the ball in play. He's highly motivated to earn his way onto next year's Ryder Cup. I think there is something to be said, and I asked him about it. Is there going to be at some point where that job takes over a little bit and maybe impacts on the course, Keegan? And he understood the question. He pushed back a little bit. Just like his goal is to make that team next year on points. Again, it's a big goal. But again, we're not there yet. Playing good golf, again, nearly top 20 last week. I like the fit for him. 100 plus finishing position bats, a nice look. Keegan Bradley here again this week for me. Bomb for me was Austin Eckroat. Going down the board here. Some stuff in the data, not great for Eckroat, but kind of been a form guy. If you've looked at kind of his finishing positions, he's been a little bit streaky. Really accurate off the tee. You saw he was strong in the missed fairway penalty off the tee. He was strong in distance from the edge of the fairway and overall accuracy. Going to keep himself in play. Did it last week. Finished T6 at Sedgefield. I want to kind of lean into that current form because that's kind of been his MO so far. He's pieced together some really strong finishes. So maybe he's got something going after that. Sedgefield last week. His win was at PGA National, Florida. Ton of water. So some spots where that's the case, I think he's going to be able to, again, have an edge because he's going to keep himself in play off the tee and hopefully get some putts to fall. Putter's not been great all summer long, but he's gained in 3 straight starts. So that's another reason I'm just kind of hoping to go in on a little bit of the short-term form on Eckroat. 150 in the outright market. Rich in this field, I guess. Maybe a finishing position bet, maybe a guy you need to look for in DFS, but I like the price. And again, no one would have thought that Lucas Glover was going to go back-to-back Sedgefield and Southwind last year because he was no man's land. So yes, this is a strong field, 70-man no-cut event. You're right to think that Scotty or Xander are going to win because they're playing the best golf of anyone in the world, and they're the best 2 golfers anyway. But I think that there's some opportunities here with some guys deep down the board, and Keegan and Eckroat got my money. So dancing around Tony Finau, to be transparent, especially 45s or 40s or something like that. That's appealing to me. I wanted to get in on Hovland. The more I dug in, and I can't. The around the green game is really, really regressed, and it just matters here too much. I think it's going to be too hard for him. He has to be so perfect everywhere else. And even though it's tough for me to see a 40 next to his name and pass on it, it's tough for me. So dancing around Mr. Finau to kind of make the next step. So, all right. Appreciate you hanging out with me. Betspertsgolf.com. Get a subscription. Jump in. Play with the rabbit hole yourself. You can listen to this in podcast feed, wherever you listen to podcasts, or on Betsperts Golf's YouTube channel. Come back on Wednesday for the DFS show. Appreciate you hanging out with me. Hit a thumbs up before you take off. Let me know who you think is going to win here, whether you think it's going to be who you think is going to win the playoffs overall, or who you think is going to win at Southwind. Appreciate you hanging out with me, guys.